Welcome to my channel, Crochet for Baby. Thank you for watching. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to knit this little dress for baby girls between 6 and 9 months old. Now, you can also make it smaller or bigger from 0 to 3 months and up to 24 months. Down here in the information box, I'll go ahead and leave some information on how you can make it smaller or bigger, so be sure to check that out. Also, if you prefer a written pattern, check out my Etsy shop. I'll leave the link to my Etsy shop in the information box as well. Thank you for your support. Now let's get started, but don't forget, all of my tutorials are always in English and in Spanish. Don't forget to subscribe, activate the notifications bell to all notifications so that you don't miss any of my tutorials. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you for watching. To begin, I'll be using these 3mm knitting needles. These are 32-inch long circular needles, and the yarn that I'm going to be using is this one here. It's Cotton Bamboo by Lion brand. This is a number 3 yarn in the color Cherry Blossom. Now, you can also use any DK weight yarn or 8-ply. Here, to begin, we need to cast on a total of 68 stitches. So I'm going to show you a way to cast on your stitches using the long tail cast on. So to do this, we're going to wrap the yarn around both needles like this 20 times. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Now here I have enough yarn for about 20 stitches. I'm going to double it up. I have enough for about 40. I'm going to double it up again. I have enough for about 60, and I'm going to double it up again. I have enough for about 80. So I'm going to leave it like this. It's best to have enough and not have enough. That way we don't have to do this again. So here I'm going to make a slip knot, insert both needles. This here is coming from the yarn that we just measured, and this here is coming from the skein. So to begin, I'm going to insert my index finger like this, open the yarn, and we're going to go from left to right, and we're going to grab a loop. So like this. You can use any other method. I prefer this method. That's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on until you have a total of 68 stitches. So continue, and then I'll come back and show you what we need to do next. Okay, I finished casting all my stitches. I have 68 stitches. Now carefully, I'm going to remove one of the needles. So here I am left with 68 stitches. Now to begin, we're going to start from the neck down. So here we're going to knit the first stitch, and all of these stitches, same thing. I'm going to knit each one of these stitches, and we're going to do this for a total of 6 rows. We're going to do the garter stitch here where you knit every stitch for every row. So like this. This is going to be the first row, so continue just knitting each one of these stitches like this all the way to the end. I'll meet you at the end of this first row. I'm here at the end of the first row. Now this last stitch, also knit. Now turn for the second row and knit the first stitch and knit across. When you finish this second row, you're going to turn and then knit across until we have a total of 6 rows. So continue. Let's finish these 6 rows where you knit every stitch for every row, and I'll come back and show you what we need to do next. Okay, I finished making these 6 rows. We have 2, 4, 6 rows. Now from here on, whenever you see this tail end here, this is going to be the beginning of the row. Now, one thing I forgot to mention when we started this here is that you need to add a buttonhole on the 3rd row. I'm not going to add any buttonholes because the buttons that I'm going to use are these. These are 6mm size pearl buttons. You can also use 7. The spaces here in these stitches are big enough for a small button to go through. I'll show you here. So you don't need to worry about adding any buttonholes unless you're using a bigger size button, see? So I'm not going to be adding any buttonholes, but if you are going to add a buttonhole, then these last 5 stitches here on this side, you are going to knit 1 and 2, and then yarn over, knit 2 together, and then knit the last stitch. That's how you would add a buttonhole. So here, to begin our pattern, this pattern here consists of repeating 6 rows, and then we do another 6 rows of garter stitch, just like we did here. So this is going to be the first row. Now, these first 5 stitches, I'm always going to knit no matter what side I'm on. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to put a stitch marker here so that I remember to always knit these 5 stitches here at the beginning and at the end. Now, to start our pattern, here we're going to purl 2. We're going to yarn over and then purl 2. Yarn over, purl 2. Yarn over, purl 2. That's your pattern. Purl 2, yarn over, purl 2. All the way to the end, 5 stitches before we finish. So 2, 4, 5. So about right here. I will meet you here at the end of this first row to our pattern to show you what we need to do next. And again, all you're doing is yarn over, purl 2. Yarn over, purl 2. Continue, and I'll meet you 5 stitches before we finish to show you what we need to do next. I'm here at the end of this first row. I did my last 2 purls. I have my last 5 stitches. Here I'm going to put a stitch marker to mark these last 5 stitches because these are the front panels. So here I'm going to knit 5. Now, at the end of this first row to our pattern, I have a total of 96 stitches. Now, we're going to turn for the second row. And here, this is the wrong side, so I'm going to knit 5. Now, these 5 stitches, remember, we always knit. Pass your stitch marker. Now we have the next 2 stitches. In the previous row, we purled. In this row, I'm going to knit these stitches. So knit 2. The yarn overs, you're going to purl. And then again, knit 2. And then purl the yarn overs. So knit 2, purl the yarn over. Knit 2, purl the yarn over. And that's how you're going to continue to the end of this second row. I'll meet you at the end to show you what we need to do next. I finished the second row to our pattern. Now here at the end, these 2 stitches before the stitch marker, you knit 2 and then knit these 5 stitches here at the end. Now for the third row, we're going to turn, and in this third row, same thing, we're going to knit these 5 stitches. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now pass your stitch marker, and here we have these 2 stitches. We're going to purl 2 and then knit 1. Purl 2, knit 1. Purl 2, knit 1. Purl 2, knit 1, purl 2. All the way to the end. I'll meet you here 5 stitches before we finish to show you what we need to do next. Now in these next 5 rows, we're always going to have 96 stitches. So continue, I'll meet you at the end. I'm here at the end of this third row to the first repeat. Now here, these last 2 stitches I purled. Now we're going to pass our stitch marker, and here at the end we always knit these 5 stitches. Now at the end of these rows here, up to the last row of the first repeat, we're going to have 96 stitches. Now turn for the 4th row, and here same thing, we knit these 5 stitches. Pass your stitch marker, and here we're going to knit 2, purl 1, knit 2. purl 1, knit 2. That's how you're going to continue. So purl 1, knit 2, purl 1, knit 2. Continue and finish this 4th row. I will meet you there to show you what we need to do next. I'm here at the end of the 4th row to the first repeat. I forgot to mention that this is going to be the first repeat here since we're going to be doing a couple of them. Now for the 5th row and the 6th row, you're just going to do the same thing we did on the 3rd and on the 4th row. So here you're going to knit these 5 stitches, pass your stitch marker, and here we're going to purl 2, knit 1, purl 2, knit 1, purl 2, knit 1. You can really tell now how the stitch is going. You see the knit stitches and then you see the 2 purl stitches, and that's how you're going to continue to the end of this 5th row. Here at the end, 2 stitches before the stitch marker, you're going to purl, then knit the last 5 stitches. Then you're going to turn for the 6th row where you're going to knit these first 5 stitches, and then you're going to do the opposite of what we're doing here in this row. You're going to knit 2, purl 1, knit 2, purl 1, all the way to the end of that 6th row. I will meet you at the end of the 6th row to this first repeat to show you what we need to do next. I'm here at the end of the 6th row to the first repeat, so we have completed the first repeat. Now to continue, we're going to do 6 rows here of garter stitch. So to do the garter stitch, all you do is knit each one of these stitches for every row. So knit these 5 stitches here, pass your stitch marker, and here we're going to knit across, so like this. That's all we're going to do to the end of this row. So continue. This here is going to be the first row to the garter stitch, so we're going to count rows again. So I'm just going to count these rows here for the pattern, so rows 1 to 6, and then for the garter stitch rows I'm going to do the same thing, rows 1 through 6. That way we keep the repeats separate from the garter stitch rows. So that's all you're going to do, is just knit across this first row. I will meet you here at the end to show you what we need to do next. I finished this first row to the garter stitch rows, and now for the 2nd row we're going to repeat the same thing. We're going to knit across, so you're going to continue and finish these next 5 rows where you just knit across every stitch for every row. So continue like this, finish this 2nd row, then you're going to turn and repeat the same thing for the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th row. I will meet you at the end of the 6th row to the garter stitch rows here to show you what we need to do next. I finished making the last 6 rows here of garter stitch. I'm at the beginning of the row. Now we're going to repeat one more of these repeats where we do these 6 rows here. So here to begin, this is going to be the first row to the 2nd repeat. So same thing here for these 5 stitches. You always knit, pass your stitch marker, and here we're going to begin our pattern. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to purl 2, yarn over, 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 purl 2. That's how you're going to continue. Purl 2, yarn over, purl 2, yarn over, purl 2, and so on. Continue to the end here of this row to show you how we're going to finish this first row to our 2nd repeat. I'm here at the end of this first row to the 2nd repeat. Now here's my last yarn over, then I purl 2. I'm going to pass my stitch marker, Whoops. Don't lose your stitches. And now I'm going to knit these last stitches here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Turn for the second row to the second repeat. We're going to knit 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pass your stitch marker, and here we have these next 2 stitches. In the previous row we purled. In this row we're going to knit 2 and purl the yarn over, knit 2, purl the yarn over, knit 2. This is how you're going to continue to the end of this second row. Continue, finish this second row, and I'll meet you at the end. Now, I forgot to mention, at the end of the first row for the second repeat, you should have a total of 138 stitches. And at the end of every row from here on for the second repeat, we're always going to have 138 stitches. I'll meet you at the end of this second row. Here at the end of this second row to the second repeat, here at the end, these last 2 stitches before the stitch marker, I knit. Now I'm going to finish here this row by knitting these last 5 stitches. Now turn for the third row. We're going to knit these 5 stitches. Pass your stitch marker, and here we're going to purl 2, knit 1, purl 2, knit 1, purl 2, knit 1. This is how you're going to continue for the third row to the second repeat. Purl 2, knit 1, purl 2. I'll meet you at the end of this third row to show you what we need to do next. I finished the third row here for the second repeat. Now for the fourth row, we're going to turn. Here in the fourth row, this is what we're going to do. We're going to knit these 5 stitches. Pass your stitch marker. Now in this row, when we're on the wrong side, remember we knit 2 and purl 1. Now you're going to continue and finish this fourth row. For the fifth row, you're just going to repeat the same thing we did on the third row, and then for the sixth row, you're just going to repeat the same thing that we're doing here in the fourth row. That's how you're going to complete the second repeat. So continue, finish this fourth row, and then continue on with the fifth and the sixth row. I will meet you at the end of the sixth row. I finished making rows 4, 5, and 6 of the second repeat. At the end of those 6 rows, you should have had 138 stitches. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to do 6 rows of the garter stitch. So we're going to do these 6 rows here. I've already started here on the first row. I knit these 5 stitches. So now all we're going to do across is just knit all of these stitches across. And then for the next 5 rows, you're just going to do the same thing. Knit across until we have a total of 6 rows. So this part here is the same thing we did here, where we did these 6 rows of garter stitch. Now continue, finish these 6 rows, and then I'll come back and show you the third repeat. Okay, I finished making the last 6 rows here of garter stitch. Now we're going to repeat the same thing we did here for the second and the first repeat. We're going to work these 6 rows, and then we're going to repeat these 6 rows. So this is going to be the third repeat. So first row to the first repeat, same thing here. We knit 5 stitches. I'm going to show you here the first couple rows, and then you're going to continue with the rest. So here for the third repeat, we are going to purl 2, then yarn over, purl 2, yarn over, purl 2. That's how you're going to continue across this first row to the third repeat. Yarn over, purl 2, yarn over, purl 2. Continue to the end of this first row. I'm here at the end of this first row to the third repeat. Now these 2 stitches before the stitch marker, I purled. Now here, these last 5 stitches, we always knit. Now turn for the second row. Now for the second row to the third repeat, this is what we're going to do. We're going to knit these first 5 stitches. You're going to pass your stitch marker, and here we're going to knit 2. Now the yarn over, you're going to purl. Knit 2, purl 1, knit 2, purl 1, knit 2. Continue like this to the end of this second row. I will meet you at the end of this second row to show you what we need to do next. I forgot to mention that at the end of the first row here for the third repeat, you should have a total of 201 stitches. And here when we do these 6 rows of garter stitch, same thing, 201 stitches. I finished the second row to the third repeat. Now here we're going to turn. I'm going to start you off here on the third row, and you're going to continue and finish the rest of the repeat and then finish the 6 rows of garter stitch. So here for the third row, knit 5, pass your stitch marker. Now for the third row here, you're going to purl 2, knit 1, purl 2. That's how you're going to continue all the way to the end. Knit 1, purl 2, knit 1, purl 2. Remember, the third and the fifth row, it's the same thing. You just repeat the same thing that I'm doing here on the third row. Purl 2, knit 1. Now, when you finish this row, you're going to turn and start on the fourth row. In the fourth row, you're going to do the opposite of what we do here. So in the fourth row, you are going to knit 2, purl 1. And then you're going to finish that fourth row, and then you're going to continue with the fifth and the sixth row. So the third and the fifth row are the same thing. The fourth and the sixth row are the same thing. I will meet you back once all of this is done to show you what we need to do next. Okay, I finished making the third repeat. I did the last 6 rows. Now I'm here at the beginning of the row where we need to start these 6 rows of garter stitch. I'm not going to do those. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to divide the sleeves so that we can continue working the rest of the little dress here. So I have a total of 201 stitches, so I need you to put some stitch markers here. For this front panel here, I have 28 stitches. For this first sleeve, I have 46 stitches. For the front, because from here on, this is going to be the front, I have 52 stitches. For the second sleeve, I have 46 stitches. And then for this front panel here, I have 29 stitches. So that's a total of 201 stitches. So to begin this row here, to separate the sleeves, this is what we're going to do. Now the yoke here, from here up to here, it's measuring about 10 centimeters, which is about 4 inches. So now we're going to continue with dividing the sleeve. So this is going to be row 1. Now here I'm just going to knit these 5 stitches, and I'm going to knit up to the first stitch marker here for the sleeve. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm just going to continue and knit these stitches here. So knit up to the first stitch marker like this. So the purl stitches now are going to be knit in this row, just like this. If you see me changing the direction of these stitches, it's because I had already done one row here and I messed up. So I may have accidentally put the stitches facing the wrong direction, but all we're doing here is just knit across like this. Okay, so these here are fine. Okay, I have these 28 stitches. Let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28. Now pass your stitch marker and here we're going to remove these 46 stitches for this sleeve. So I'm going to use this yarn needle here, and all I'm going to do is just remove these stitches here. "46. Now we're going to leave these stitches here, and now we're going to continue. I'm going to remove this stitch marker here and put it here at the beginning. That way I know that when I do the sleeves, I'm going to start here on this side right here. I've made a mistake before where I knit the other way and it's a big mess, so you don't want that. Now we're going to continue for the back side, and we're going to knit these 52 stitches. Here under the sleeve, I'm only going to add one stitch, so add an extra stitch. So now continue for the back side and knit across the back side, or actually this is going to be the front from here on. So just knit. You knit the knit stitches. Now this stitch here is kind of big, so what you can do is just cross it with the next stitch where you knit the next stitch like this. I think that's what I'm going to do. So knit the second stitch and then knit this first stitch like this, and that way they're like crisscrossed, and there's this stitch here is not as stretched, so I think that'll work better. So here just knit across. Finish knitting these 52 stitches. I will meet you right here to show you how we're going to separate the second sleeve. And actually, I'm going to remove these stitches here, and then I'll show you how we're going to continue. Okay, I finished knitting these 52 stitches. Now I'm here under the second sleeve. I removed these 46 stitches, and now I am going to add one extra stitch here at the end. Now we're going to continue for this panel here, and same thing I did on the other side, so that this stitch here is not too long or too big because it tends to get huge. I'm going to knit the second stitch first, so just pull it like that and then knit this stitch. Now knit the next stitch, and this here it's like crisscross, that way it's not huge. Now I'm just going to knit across this front panel, but I'm going to stop 5 stitches before I finish because I am going to overlap the panel so that from here on we continue and work the waist in the round. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'll come back and show you what we need to do next. Okay, I'm almost done with this first row. I finished knitting these stitches here for this panel. I have 5 stitches left. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove that stitch marker, and with the help of this double pointed needle, I am going to remove these 5 stitches. So carefully remove your needle there and insert the double pointed needle here. And now what we're going to do to overlap here, so this here is where the buttonholes should be going. So I'm going to overlap this like this. I'm going to pull my needle so that my cable is here at the end. So just pull a loop here in the back and pull your needle so that we can overlap here the back side, because from here on this is the back side. And we can continue with the waist. So this here is going to go on top like this. So here's the needle with the working yarn. Here are the 5 stitches that I removed. They are on top of the first front panel here that we did. And now we're going to join. So these 5 stitches we're going to knit 2 together. So hold it like this. So make sure that these stitches here match with the stitches in the back, and we're going to knit 2 together like this. See, I'm going through the first needle, the one on top, this one, and then I'm going through the needle in the back, and I'm knitting these 2 stitches together, remove them, and then knit the next 2 together, knit the next 2 together, and knit the next 2 together, and there should be one more, this one here. So knit these 2 together. Stitch markers on the way. Knit 2 together. Now we're joined. We don't need that needle anymore. This is what it looks like. So this panel here is where the buttonholes are. That's why I had a stitch marker there. If you, for some reason, it's the opposite, then you just overlap it where this part here is under and this is on top. It's okay. So now we're going to pass a stitch marker here to this needle because this is still going to be the beginning of the row. Now I'm going to continue with the garter stitch here for the waist. I'm going to keep it nice and simple. You can also use another stitch, but I'm going to keep it nice and simple, and I'm going to knit this here in the round using the magic loop technique. So with the magic loop technique, you pull a loop here just like we did. I'm actually going to pull this so that I can show you. So I have all my stitches here now. I'm going to pull a loop here right in the middle, right here. So just pull your cable like that. Now, with a magic loop technique, you always want to make sure that the working yarn is always in front of the needle here in the back. So pull the needle from the back, and now we're going to continue with the garter stitch. Now, with the garter stitch, when you knit it in the round, you have to alternate between a row of knit and a purl row. So I already did my knit row. So in this next row, I'm going to do my purl row. So all you do is just purl across. Here, I want to show you what you need to do with the stitches that we added under the sleeve. Now, I forgot to mention that at the end of this first row that we just did where we divided the sleeves, you should have a total of 106 stitches at the end of this first row. So now all you're going to do is just purl across like this. And that's all you're going to do. I'm going to show you here what you need to do when you finish these stitches for this needle. And then we need to do the stitches on the other needle. So Okay, so here's the last stitch for this needle. Drop that needle, turn, push the cable. This yarn needs to always be in front of the needle here in the back, and then pull the needle from the back here and start the same thing. Purl across to the end of this second row. And that's all we're going to do here. So continue. I will meet you at the end of this second row to show you what we need to do next. Okay, I'm here at the end of this second row. This is where we purled across. I'm going to drop that needle, push the cable, and put my stitch marker here to mark the beginning of the row. And now we're going to pull the needle from the back. And in this row, I need to knit. So I'm going to knit across, and that's all I'm going to do. So you're just going to alternate between a knit row and a purl row, and that's how we're going to make the waist. I'm only going to do, I think, the 6 rows that we were doing here, and then we're going to continue with the pattern. So knit across for this 3rd row, then purl for the 4th row, knit for the 5th row, and then purl the 6th row. At the end of each row here, we're going to have 106 stitches. So continue. Let's do these 6 rows until we have, I don't know, 3 lines like this. And then we're going to continue with the skirt of the little dress. Okay, I finished making these 6 rows here of garter stitch for the waist. Now, if you want to make the waist a bit wider, then go ahead and make more rows. Here, what I'm going to do in the next row, row 7, is I am going to make some increases here to make the skirt of the little dress a bit more fuller. So here, to begin the 7th row, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to knit 2. Then I'm going to yarn over, knit 2. This is how I'm going to increase here the skirt. So yarn over, knit 2. Yarn over, knit 2. Yarn over, knit 2. Now keep in mind that for the last 6 rows, I had a total of 106 stitches. So here we're going to increase. So I'm going to finish this row, and then I'll come back and show you how many stitches I'm going to have at the end of this row. So all you're doing is yarn over, knit 2, yarn over, knit 2. I'm here at the end of the 7th row. Now, at the end of this row, I have 160 stitches. If you're off by 1, 2, or 3 stitches, it's okay. It doesn't matter, because from here on, we're just going to knit the skirt of the dress where we knit for every row. So if you're off by a couple stitches here and there, it's okay. So at the end of this 7th row, I have a total of 160 stitches. So here, to continue, we're going to just knit across. So knit these 2 stitches, knit the yarn overs, then knit 2, knit the yarn over, knit 2, and then knit the yarn overs, and so on. This is how we're going to continue for this 8th row. And for me, at the end of this row, I'm going to have 160 stitches. So continue for this 8th row, just knit all around, and I'll meet you at the end. Okay, I finished the 8th row where I knit all around. Now here I'm going to put a stitch marker to mark this 8th row so that I can tell you from here on how many rows I'm going to do. So the last row that I finished was the 8th row. So I'll count from here how many rows I'm going to do, and all I'm going to do all around is just knit for every row all around. Now I'm going to probably switch to shorter circular needles, that way I can just knit all around without having to work the magic loop thing here. That way I don't have a gap here, which tends to happen sometimes if you're not careful. This is the front, so I don't want to damage that area, so I'm probably going to switch to shorter knitting needles. Maybe 16-inch. That should be long enough for me to work this part here in the round. So continue watching. I will let you know exactly how many rows I'm going to do. So I will meet you at the end of that row. Okay, I have done a total of 62 rows. So from here up to here, there's 62 rows. Now, if you have less or more rows, it's okay. As long as you like the length, it's fine. You can make it shorter, longer, that's up to you. I'm going to make my little dress a little bit long. I like my dresses to be a tiny bit long. That way the baby can wear it a bit longer. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to do the garter stitch. So remember that when we did this part here, we changed one row was knit, the other one was a purl. So knit, purl, and we're going to do this part here, I'd say for about 8 rows. Here we have 6 rows. I want this to be a little bit wider, so I'm gonna try maybe 8 or 10 rows. We'll see. Just continue watching. I'll tell you exactly how many rows I'm going to do. So here I've knit the last row, obviously, because that's what I've been doing. So this next row here, I am going to purl. I'm going to put my stitch marker here. So this next row here, I'm going to purl. So purl across like this. Now, when you finish this row, here you're going to start with the next row where you knit across. And then when you finish that row, you're going to purl and then continue like that. Knit one row and then purl the next. Knit, purl, knit, purl. Continue watching. I'll let you know exactly how many rows I'm going to do. So I will meet you at the end of that row. Okay, I finished making the bottom of the little dress here. I have done a total of 12 rows. We have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. You can make less rows, more rows. I'm going to leave it like this. Now, what I'm going to do is we're going to start to cast off our stitches. So here for me in the next row, I have to knit. So we're going to knit the next stitch and knit the next. Now, bring the first stitch that you knit over the second stitch. And that's how we're going to cast off our stitches. So knit the next stitch, bring the first stitch over the second. Knit the next stitch, bring the first stitch over the second. And that's all we're going to do all around. So continue. Let's finish this last row and then I'll come back and show you what we need to do next. I finished casting off all of my stitches. This is my last stitch here. I removed it and I put it here on my crochet hook. So what I'm going to do is we need to join to the first stitch. So all you need to do is just insert your hook like this, grab a loop, and then bring a loop through and then pull. But let me see, I think the next stitch is better. We want a tight join here. So just go into the next stitch right there. Grab a loop, pull it through there, and then pull the yarn through, and then you just hide this here on the inside. And the bottom of the little dress, it's all done. That's what it looks like. Look how beautiful that is. I absolutely love this yarn. It has so much drape. It's beautiful. Look at that. Now I still need to block it, so it'll look a lot nicer once it's all done. Look at the yoke. I absolutely love this yoke. I'm so glad I went with this side instead of this side because it is a reversible yoke. In another tutorial, I'm going to show you maybe another little dress where I do this as the front of the little dress, or maybe a little cardigan to go with this. Maybe I'll do that. We'll see. So there it is. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to make one of the sleeves. So we're going to do the first sleeve. We started here on this side, so this here is going to be our first sleeve. So to do the sleeve, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use slightly smaller knitting needles. These are 2.5 millimeter. Remember that for the dress we used 3 millimeters. So for the sleeve, I want the sleeve to be a tiny bit smaller, so I'm going to use the 2.5. You don't have to use a slightly smaller knitting needles. You can use the same. It's just that the sleeve is going to be slightly bigger, but it should not affect the design in any way. I'm going to use these slightly smaller knitting needles because here all we're going to do is 4 rows, and then we're going to cast off our stitches. So we're not making many rows. We're going to do this part here, and I'm only going to do 4 rows, and then in the 5th row we're going to cast off our stitches. So to begin here, I'm going to start here in the middle. This is where we added that extra stitch. So I'm going to, with the help of a crochet hook, just insert your hook there, grab a loop, bring it through, and tie a knot. And now into that same stitch, insert your needle and grab a loop. So like this. And then between the first stitch that we have here and this area here, pick a spot and add an extra stitch. For me, I'm going to add 3 extra stitches, 1 in the center and 1 on each side. There, I think that's perfect. Now I have the next stitch here for the sleeve. Here you're going to have to use one of these double pointed needles so that you can pick up these stitches before you knit them. This is how I do it, and it works for me. So I'm going to pick up these stitches using my double pointed needles. Make sure that you go one by one, and you don't have to pick them all at once. Just pick a couple like I'm going to do here, and then we're going to push our double pointed needles and then knit like this. So knit the next stitch and knit the next. Here, remember that for the sleeve we had 2 purl stitches and 1 knit. So here we're all going to just knit the stitches all around. We're not going to continue with the pattern anymore. So knit all of your stitches, and then again do the same thing with your double pointed needle. Go back and pick up the next group of stitches like this. And now just knit. And then do the next set, and so on. You're just going to continue all around like this until you pick up your 46 stitches for the sleeve. Then towards the end we're going to pick up 1 more, so that at the end of this first row we have 49 stitches. Okay, so continue, and then I'll meet you here at the end of this first row to show you what we need to do next. Okay, I'm here at this other side. This is the first row. Now, what I'm going to do here, up to here, I have 48 stitches. Remember, we had 46 and then we added 2, so that's 48. And here, before we start the next row, right before the center here, remember in the center we picked up a stitch, I'm going to pick up another stitch. So I'm going to do it right here. I think that's pretty good. Now I'm going to turn my work, and from here on we're going to knit in the round using the magic loop technique. So with the magic loop technique, remember, you pull the needle from the back, you leave a loop here, and then you start knitting. In this case we're going to purl, because remember, for the garter stitch in the round you have to alternate between a row of knit and a row of purl. The first row here for the sleeve was a knit, so now for the second row I need to purl, and I have 49 stitches for this row. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to purl the first stitch, and then I'm going to purl the next, and so on. Here I'm just going to purl these stitches until I finish this side, and then I'm going to show you what you need to do with the magic loop technique once you finish these stitches, so that we can start on the stitches here in the back. Here's the last stitch, purl, drop that needle, turn, push your cable, pull the needle from the back, leave a loop on the other end, and purl. And that's all. That's how you go from one needle to the next with the magic loop technique. Now we're just going to purl and finish this second row. I don't want to remove my yarn. That's what you see it here, because this is like a lifeline. If I don't like the way that the sleeves look, I can always just rip it off. So I'm just going to leave it there for a bit and see how it works out. I'm going to turn, so drop that needle, push your cable, and now for row 3, we're going to knit. And remember, all you do is remember that this yarn here always needs to be in front of the needle in the back. Pull the needle, and in this 3rd row, we're going to knit. So knit across for the 3rd row, and then for the 4th row you're going to purl. I will meet you at the end of the 4th row to show you what we need to do next. Okay, I finished the 4th row, so in total here I have 4 rows for the sleeve. I'm not going to make any more. This is just a little edging that I'm doing here for the sleeve. Now I'm going to pull the needle from the back and we're going to cast off our stitches. So to cast off our stitches, I'm going to knit the first stitch, knit the next stitch. Now bring the first stitch that you knit over the 2nd stitch. Again, knit the next stitch, bring the first stitch over the 2nd stitch, knit, and bring the stitch that was on the needle over the stitch that you just knit, and that's all. This is how we cast off our stitches. So continue for this last row, and then I'll come back and show you the finished sleeve. Okay, I finished casting off all of my stitches. Here's the last stitch. I put it here through my crochet hook. So we're just going to go here to the beginning and we're going to join with a slip stitch like this. And we're going to pull this yarn through. This part here is all done now. The sleeve is done. That's what it looks like. So all we need to do is just hide this end here on the inside. And that's what it looks like. I like the sleeve. I think it's so pretty. So now we're going to do the same thing we did here for this little sleeve. We're going to do it here on this side. So we're going to go right here through the front. So we're going to pick up our stitches here around, and we're going to do the same thing. With a crochet hook, I'm going to go right here in the center. I'm going to grab a loop here with the same yarn, pull it through, and tie a knot here. Now insert your needle through that same stitch and grab a loop. Oops. And grab a loop, pull it through. Here's our first stitch, and then we're going to pick up an extra stitch between the first and the stitch that I just did. So I'm going to go right here. There's no right or wrong way of doing this, just pick up an extra stitch. Make sure that wherever you insert your needle, it doesn't create a big gap. So if it does, move on to the next area. That's a big gap there. I'm going to remove this stitch marker. And let's try this here. This is going to work. Yep, that'll work. Perfect. So now we're just going to go all around. Here we're going to use the double pointed needle here and pick up these stitches. Make sure you pick up each and every one of these stitches like this. Put them on your double pointed needles. Now these double pointed needles, I think these are 3mm. It doesn't matter. I wouldn't do bigger than that. Yeah, 3mm. So push your needle and then knit all around. Remember that here we have knits and purls, so all we're going to do is just knit them all. So knit, let's see, knit and knit. These are the purls, so knit them, knit. And then continue like this all around. This part here is exactly how we did the other side. I'm just going to start you off here, show you the first row, and then you're going to continue and finish the sleeve. So I'm going to continue all around, picking up our stitches and knitting the first row. I will meet you here at this end to show you what we need to do next. Okay, I finished picking up my stitches here. I'm at the end of the first row, so I'm going to pick up an extra stitch here right before the stitch that we picked up in the middle. So I'm just going to go right here and pick up an extra stitch. right there. Perfect. So now I have 49 stitches. Now turn, push your cable, pull the needle from the back and purl. So row 2 we are going to purl, row 3 we are going to knit, and row 4 you're going to purl. It's the same thing we did on the first sleeve. So I purl the first stitch, purl the next, and purl across. Continue, finish these 4 rows, and then cast off your stitches, and then I'll come back and show you the finished little dress. Okay, I finished making the second sleeve. This is what it looks like. I went ahead and just hid my ends here, so the little dress is all done, and that's what it looks like. It's absolutely beautiful, and it was so easy to make, so I hope you like it. Now, here in the back side, I went ahead and added my buttons. These are the buttons that I used. These are 6mm buttons, but you can also use 6, 7, 8, or 9mm without having to make the buttonholes like I showed you. So the little dress is all done. It's absolutely beautiful. Now let me give you the finished measurements. Now let's see, the length from the top here of the shoulder down to the end, it's measuring about 34 centimeters, which is about 13.5 inches. Now this part here right across from here to here, it's measuring about 11 centimeters, which is about 4.5 inches, and the waist, just the top, it's measuring about 25 centimeters, which is about 9.75 inches. So based on these measurements, this little dress is for baby girls between 6 and 9 months old, but you can easily make it smaller or bigger from 0 to 3 months and up to 24 months. Down here in the information box, I'll go ahead and leave some information on how you can make it smaller or bigger, so be sure to check that out. Now here's another little dress that I did following the same pattern. The only difference is that to make this one here, I used 3.5mm knitting needles, and it's done exactly in the same way. And this one here is for baby girls between 9 and 12 months old. Now make sure to comment below and let me know if you want me to show you how to make the matching little cardigan sweater to go with the little dress. Okay, so this was today's tutorial. I hope you like it. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.